Okay, welcome to everyone who is joining us. Hope you had a very beautiful first days of Yontiv and Shabbos. This is the weekly Mesilas Yesharim Shir, The Path of the Just, the book which teaches us how to be good Jews and to serve Hashem properly. If you're listening live and the connection isn't that great, I'll be posting a recorded, better version later. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type them on the side and I'll answer them after or during. Okay, we're on chapter 7. We're learning about the trait of zrizus, of alacrity or zealousness, that we have to run to do mitzvahs and we have to try our best to not be lazy and to serve Hashem and not let the natural physical drives which prevent us from serving Hashem get in the way of our Torah observance. We mentioned last week that laziness is something which comes naturally. It's a part of us. We're physical beings, and a physical being is naturally lazy. So this part of Mesilas Yesharim, we are learning how to overcome that laziness and have the midah of zrizus, which is translated either as zealousness or alacrity. And we did one chapter on it, and now we're on the second chapter called Beveir Chelke HaZrizus, chapter 7, explaining the different parts of zrizus, of alacrity. Chelke HaZrizus Shnayim, there are two parts to zrizus. I'm not going to translate zrizus every time. I'll just say zrizus, because it's really hard to find an accurate English word, but it means like alacrity or zealousness, running to fulfill a mitzvah and not being lazy. So there are two parts of zrizus. Echad kodem hamaisa ve'echad achrei kain. One element is before the action, and the other element is during the action. Kodem haschalas hamaisa hu shelo yachmitz ha'adam es hamitzvah. Before doing the action, is a person should not let the mitzvah. He shouldn't delay in doing the mitzvah. It's interesting. The word he uses is yachmitz, like chametz, right? Because matzah has to be cooked. We're actually going to talk about matzah soon. It's interesting that we're learning this on Pesach. Matzah has to be cooked very quickly. If you don't cook the dough within 18 minutes, it becomes chametz. So shelo yachmitz, we shouldn't let the mitzvah become chametz and not fulfill it. Hadam es mitzvah. Ela behagia zmano, o behizdamnu lefanav, o ba'aloso b'machshavto, yimahir yachish ma'asehu la'echaz bo v'lasososa. Soon as it's the proper time, or the mitzvah comes in front of us, or we have a thought to do a mitzvah, we shouldn't let it go and we should do it. Right? He says three scenarios where there would be an option to do a mitzvah. One is the proper time. Some mitzvahs are time dependent, like eating matzah, right? It's a mitzvah to eat matzah on the 15th night of Nisan. There's no mitzvah to eat matzah any other time during the year. So when you eat, so soon as the time comes, after, right, you shouldn't wait till like, the first night you shouldn't start the Seder at like 10 p.m. because you want to start it as early as you can after nightfall so you can be quick to fulfill the mitzvah because it's time dependent. Or Shema in the morning. There's a mitzvah to say Shema every morning. So you should, as soon as you can, get up and daven to say the Shema. Or he says, a mitzvah that comes to you. Let's say there's a lost object. There's a mitzvah to return a lost object, and you see this lost object. So you shouldn't say, I'll come back later and try to find the owner. You should grab it right away and then try to find the owner. Or if you have a thought to do a mitzvah. Let's say, you think that there's an elderly person who lives near you, and maybe they need help grocery shopping now because they can't get there because of the coronavirus. So you shouldn't say, okay, when I get to it, I'll call them. But right away, as soon as you think of doing the mitzvah, you should go and do it. Be very quick to do that mitzvah. And you shouldn't let any time go between the thought to do the mitzvah and the actual mitzvah. So there's no danger. He actually uses the word of danger. He says, because the more that you leave time, the more that you let there be a lapse of time to fulfill the mitzvah, the more chance is that you're not going to be able to fulfill the mitzvah and more things will come up to detract you for the mitzvah. Maybe you'll think, I should help this old lady get groceries because of COVID-19. She can't get to the supermarket. And you say, I don't want to do it right now. But then before you know it, you have so many things that get in the way, you're not going to actually be able to do that mitzvah. Our rabbis have actually taught us the truth of this. When it came to the coronation of King Solomon, King David told them to bring Solomon to Gichon, a city called Gichon. Benayahu answered King David, Amen, Ken Yiratzon, Amen, And Ken Yomer Hashem, so saith Hashem. So David says, go bring Solomon to Gihon to coronate him. And Benayahu answers him, yes, so saith Hashem. Amru, so the rabbi says, Elishonim, Rabbi Pinchas b'shem Rabbi Chanan Tzipori, v'halo kfar namar, hinei v'nolad lach, ish menucha. Yes, why did he have to answer him, so saith Hashem? There was already a promise to King David that his son Solomon was going to be king. So what was the point of Benayahu answering, yeah, amen, so saith Hashem? So Ela harbe kategorim yamdu mikan v'ad Gihon. He says there are many things that can happen by the time he gets from where he is to Gihon. Meaning, even though that Hashem said King Solomon should be king and he should be anointed in Gihon, he was worried that if we don't go right away and we don't do the mitzvah of coronating Solomon, many things could get in the way that would prevent us from fulfilling this mitzvah. Al Kain, he's here zichronim levracha. The rabbis say, "Ushmartem es hamatzos." You should guard the matzos. Mitzvah haboliyoncha al tachmitzana. A mitzvah which comes to your hand, you should not let it become chametz. You should do it right away. What's the comparison to matzah? Like we mentioned before, matzah has to be cooked within 18 minutes after you add the water to the dough. If you don't do it, it becomes chametz. The same with mitzvahs. That when a mitzvah, an opportunity to do a mitzvah, comes to your hand, you shouldn't let it become chametz. You should do it right away. And he points out on the bottom, in this edition, I think he's quoting here from Rav Yerucham Levovitz, it's not only that you're losing something if you don't fulfill the mitzvah right away, but he says it actually messes up the actual mitzvah. And it's similar to matzah in that respect. For example, matzah that's not cooked in the quickly enough, it's not baked quickly enough, it's not matzah, it's chametz. It gets totally messed up. He says the same with a mitzvah. If you don't run to do a mitzvah and do it with the same zrizos, alacrity that it could have been done with, it's not the same mitzvah when you leave it go and don't do it right away. The quality of the mitzvah, he actually says, changes if you don't run to do the mitzvah. And that, he says, is the actual comparison to matzah. So very appropriate that we are learning this chapter, which so far we had 2 references to matzah so far. Very cool. V'amru, and they said, La'olam, Yaktim Adam Lidvar Mitzvah Shalafi Sheikdimu Bechira L'Tzeira. Says, very interesting example he brings here. What he's doing now is, this is very interesting, just as an aside, what the Mesilas Yesharim does, right? He's telling us, the whole point of this book is to tell us how to be good Jews. But if you notice, all of the concepts that he says, they're not something that he invented by himself. It's not like he sat down and he, philosophized and said, this is the best way to serve God. But you notice he's always quoting rabbis from the past. He's always quoting the Talmud. He's always quoting the Torah, because he's taking ideas that were always in Judaism and he's just solidifying them and explaining them so that we can understand it. And he's organizing them on a different level and obviously adding his insights. But everything that he says is coming from our tradition. That everything is coming from what God told Moshe on Mount Sinai and gave over to the Jewish people after they left Egypt. So that's why the Mesilas Yesharim, the Ramchal, is constantly quoting different sources in the Torah, in the Gemara, in the Midrashim, because everything he's telling us is all sourced. It's not something that he just invented himself. So it says, so the example now he brings is, you might remember this in Chumash Bereshis, Lot. Anyone who was ever in Israel, whenever you're by the Dead Sea, every tour guide says, in any pillar of salt that they see, they say that's Lot's wife. Every tour guide has their own example of Lot's wife. But right when they were fleeing Sodom, Lot and his daughters were saved, and his wife turns around and she became a pillar of salt. So after that, the Torah describes how the daughters of Lot actually thought all of the world was destroyed. Right? It happened previously. Noah, in the times of Noah, the whole world was destroyed except for those in the ark. So the daughters actually thought that the entire world was destroyed, and the only people left were Lot and the 2 daughters. So they really thought they were doing the right thing. They thought in order that humanity should continue, they had to have relations with their father. So the older sister had relations first in front of the younger sister, and the older sister, through her descendant became King David eventually. And the younger sister, later on, past that generation, later on in history, one of her descendants became part of the Jewish people. So the Gemara says in Nazir that you see from the fact that the older sister went first to do what she thought was a mitzvah, that she was rewarded more, that her descendants joined the Jewish people before the other her other sister who waited to do the mitzvah, what they thought was a mitzvah. And through the older sister, we have the Ruth and King David, who came from that, and ultimately Mashiach, from this act that happened of really what was incest. Eventually, Mashiach is going to come because Mashiach descends from King David. Okay, now the next Gemara. Now he's going to bring another source. V'amru, it says in the Gemara in Pesachim, Zrizim makdimin lemitzvahs. You should be zariz, you should hasten to perform mitzvahs. What's interesting, this example in the Gemara is where Avraham was commanded to take his son Isaac and sacrifice him on Mount Moriah. So you would think, right? Most of us, I think, would have a hard time doing this. Even if God told us and we knew it was God telling us to sacrifice our child, it would be very, very difficult. Not only did Avraham heed what Hashem told him, but he did it very quickly. He got up very early and he ran to do it because he wanted to do the mitzvah that Hashem told him, and he wanted to do it as fast as he could. So it says, Rizim Magdim Lemitzvahs, and that's the example. V'chein Amru, it also says, La'olam, this is in the Gemara in Brachos, La'olam Yaretz Adam L'dvar Mitzvah V'afilu B'Shabbos. A person is allowed to run to do a mitzvah even on Shabbos. Right, on Shabbos, in addition to not driving a car and not using electricity and the other 39 malachas, there is a prohibition that you're not allowed to run. You're not allowed to run on Shabbos, because we're supposed to not be in a rush. We're supposed to be relaxed, enjoying the day, and be in a different. We're supposed to conduct ourselves differently than the regular week. So while we might be in the hustle and bustle during the weekdays, on Shabbos, we are supposed to, on the Sabbath, we are supposed to not walk in the same hurried way. There's one exception: when you're doing a mitzvah. If you're running to synagogue, there's actually a mitzvah, or to do a mitzvah is actually you're allowed to run. You're allowed to run on Shabbos only if you're doing a mitzvah. So we see how important it is to do a mitzvah quickly. There's actually a rabbi where I went to yeshiva, Rabbi Einstetter in Eretz Yisrael. He runs from his house, not only on Shabbos, but he does this every day of the week. His house to afternoon services in Eretz Yisrael, he would actually run. And he ran pretty fast. He's in pretty good shape because he wanted to do the mitzvah quickly. And I've seen other rabbis do it. My Rebbe did it. He's in his 80s, and I've seen him running to services to make sure he gets there on time. And we're going to actually talk about later, not this week, we probably won't get up to it, how when we do a physical action, that can actually impact us on the inside. For example, he said, he's going to write later, it's very hard sometimes to inspire ourselves to have this midah of zrizus, to run to do mitzvahs, right? We're lazy people, let's face it. But he says, if it doesn't come from the inside, if we actually do it on the outside, if we act like we are running to do mitzvahs, if we physically run to do mitzvahs, then eventually it'll impact us on the inside, so we'll have that inner spiritual desire to do it. So when the alarm goes off, if we get out of bed quickly and run to the car and not speed too fast to get to synagogue, eventually that is going to impact our inner desires to actually always want to run to do mitzvahs. So the way we act on the outside will actually impact us on the inside, and that's what we're going to get to soon. Okay, Ubemedrash Amru, it says in the Medrash, V'hui nagenu almus, bezrizus ke'ilan alumesa, b'med at amer betoch alamus tofefos. He refers to the young folks that would hit the cymbals in the band. Ki hazrizus hi midah shleimus gadol asher tivah shel adam mona mimenu ata. So that he's referring to in the world to come, that if we are running to do mitzvahs here, then we are going to have a larger understanding of God and godliness in the next world, and we will be running in the next world in a good way to understand the knowledge of God, which is, I guess, the reward. The Rambam discusses in one place that the reward in the next world is to have a total knowledge of God. Can you imagine if you understood everything about God and why God does different things? That's something which is impossible for us to know in this world, but in the next world, when we are just souls, that we have a easier time understanding. Umishim is gaber v'tovis ba kol ma sheyuchol hinei lavo yiske lo be'emes asher habori yisbarach yitin lo scharo chelaf ma sheishtadel achrei b'zman avodaso. So just like if we work very hard in this world, God will reward us similarly in the next world. Okay, so let's stop here for this week. This is Mesilas Yesharim, the Path of the Just. Thank you to everyone who joined. We were just talking about, again, Zrizus. We were bringing a lot of sources in the Torah and in the Talmud, how important it is to, when you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, to fulfill one of the commandments, whether it's mitzvahs ben adam lechavero, ben adam lamakom, like praying or eating matzah, or doing one of the mitzvahs that are between man and God, you should run to do it, or if it's a mitzvah between man and man. There's a lot of those opportunities now. It's Passover. We have so many mitzvahs to do. There's still a mitzvah to eat matzah. can get a mitzvah to do that. And there's so many, unfortunately, people are in tough circumstances now. People need money, people need help going to the supermarket and whatnot. So there's so many mitzvahs that could be done between us and our fellow man. So now's the time to not let any mitzvahs go. And tomorrow, on Sunday, we will continue with the Lashon Hara classes, the laws of evil speech, and talk about... we're going to talk about certain exceptions where it's actually you're allowed to talk negatively about somebody, and sometimes it's even a mitzvah to talk negatively. And we'll get to those classes, God willing, tomorrow. If you have any questions or need anything, please feel free to reach out.